who believes the border should have lower priority than the overall shape of relations with the EU. We'll try and find out what Brussels really wants, and we'll hear from our 5 main parties. But first, the whole Brexit process has been likened to a messy divorce, with the biggest battle over who will win custody of the problem child, the Irish border. Jennifer O'Leary reports on the Brexit breakup.
No border on the island of Ireland.
No hard border.
No hard border.
No hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland.
All sides in the Brexit negotiations appear to agree on what they don't want.
I'm not happy with it.
But breaking up is always hard to do. Body language can help to identify what each person may be feeling. It may hurt, but non-verbal clues have a lot of truth to them. And the Brexit divorce after such a long marriage between the UK and the EU is taking a significant toll. Political cartoonist Ian Knox has been drawing Northern Ireland's politics and its characters for decades. The border between Northern Ireland and the Republic is increasingly the focus of a political custody battle as part of the divorce negotiations. The European Commission's task force, led by Michel Barnier, has put forward 3 possible options for preventing a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. Option A is a future relationship between the UK and the EU that avoids the need for a border. Option B is that solutions like technology are found to solve the issue. And option C is that Northern Ireland remains aligned with EU rules in a number of areas. For some, that amounts to Ireland winning the custody tug-of-war. Option C, the EU's fallback plan to keep Northern Ireland in the customs union, is seen by many as a direct threat to British sovereignty. It's also led to accusations that Dublin is using the border as a major bargaining tool. A strategy, deliberate or otherwise, that is having a direct impact on Anglo-Irish relations. Sir Malcolm Rifkind was Margaret Thatcher's Europe Minister and later John Major's Foreign Secretary.
It was stupid, it was offensive, it was foolish, and it should never have been raised even as a theoretical option. And I can only speculate why it was there in the first place.
Why do you think that that was put down as an option?
I think when Michel Barnier gets his mandate, he's dealing with 26, 27 governments, and at the beginning of the negotiation, not the end, they all put in their favourite proposal. I suspect it came from the Irish government in Dublin. I don't know, but that's my suspicion. And they should have thought, if it was them, or they at least could have stopped it happening. And they should have realised that far from helping their cause, it caused such deep resentment, not just in Northern Ireland amongst Unionists, throughout the whole of the United Kingdom. It was silly, and it was childish, and it shouldn't have happened.
The so-called Irish question is a core Brexit puzzle. How can the UK leave the EU and avoid a hard border?
It's going to require an awful lot of negotiation and an awful lot of detail.
Some suggest that Dublin is playing hardball in these negotiations. Is that a genuine position, or is Dublin playing hardball because it's what Michel Barnier wants it to do?
The European position is the Irish position. This was discussed at length within the European Council of the 27 remaining member states. We've been clear, we want the closest possible relationship with the UK.
But you are playing hardball.
We're just stating what is in the best interest of this island of Ireland and the future EU-UK relationship. It's not hardball. You can put any title as you want. We have to respect the integrity and sovereignty of Ireland and indeed the European Union as a whole. We didn't make this decision. We can't be expected to take whatever London puts at it, and we can't be expected to come up with all the solutions.
But whilst the focus is on the divorce settlement, the emotional fallout can be trickier to navigate. Matthew O'Toole is a former Downing Street press advisor for David Cameron and Theresa May.
I think one of the reasons why Brexit's really difficult for Northern Ireland is that it seemed the progress was being made in terms of building a slightly more shared, plural, occasionally slightly kind of smudged sort of identity in society. But the Brexit vote has kind of forced people back into their polls. And one of the things that's interesting actually is, it's not a new thing for European battles, struggles, wars to be fought on the island of Ireland and to force people into these polls. Actually, in many ways, we're still kind of fighting the battles of the 17th century, the Williamite Wars in Northern Ireland. Obviously, every summer people march to commemorate those wars, and then other people are offended by it and don't like it. So that European battle never went away in Northern Ireland. It's still being commemorated in gable ends and in marches. And now we're at the centre of another sort of question of, another European battle, another question of the status of Northern Ireland and the whole island.
Just as divorcing couples can seek the sanctuary of their own families during the process, Brexit has, it seems, crystallised the issue of identity here. Brian Feeney was among a group of self-described civic nationalists who recently met with the Taoiseach in Dublin to raise their concerns that Brexit could leave them, as they see it, abandoned.
Obviously, last summer in the general election, Northern Nationalists turned their back on Westminster. It is quite significant because they just believe they have no faith whatsoever in this British government, and indeed in the British government since 2010.
In response, a self-titled civic unionism group issued what they described as a positive challenge to Northern Nationalists. Trevor Ringland is among that group. As a former rugby international, he wore a green jersey for Ireland.
Through rugby, I was able to experience good relations, great friends across the island, a tricolour that included me, a soldier song that included me, but it wasn't the same tricolour and it wasn't the same soldier song that was wrapped around members of the IRA. It's always amazed me that on this island we've never managed to create an identity for Irish that includes those of us who are British.
The Civic Unionist group says it wants to challenge assumptions that unionists are passive or opposed to equality and rights.
While the DUP maybe politically represent unionism, they don't actually represent unionism. My concern is that at this moment in time, nationalism and republicanism have given up on power sharing in Northern Ireland and are going down a very narrow rhetoric. As I said to a member of Sinn Féin, I said, you've pushed the hate button again and you shouldn't have done that. And now you've done that, it's going to be very hard to put it back in its box again.
The Brexit divorce comes at a time of political polarisation here following the collapse of power sharing. What's taken many aback is the pledge to nationalists by the Taoiseach and leader of Fine Gael, a party long perceived to be moderates in terms of a United Ireland agenda.
To the nationalist people in Northern Ireland, there will be no hard border on our island, and you will never again be left behind by an Irish government.
Brexit moved Irish reunification into the political mainstream in Dublin, and some have suggested that unionists who lobbied for Brexit have accelerated the likelihood of a united Ireland.
No, I don't think that is right. I mean, clearly, as part of the decision of the people of the UK as a whole to leave the European Union, one of the challenges, there's only one, is this question of the Northern Irish Republic of Ireland border. And that is a challenge, it is a problem, but it's not one that is unanswerable. Our primary duty and obligation is to the people of Northern Ireland. And while we have excellent relations with the Irish Republic and want to maintain that and improve that even further, it cannot be at the expense of Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom.
The divorce negotiations may eventually result in a solution that negates the likelihood of a hard border. But for some nationalists, Brexit immediately shifted the borders in the mind and tilted their political gravity away from Stormont to Dublin.
For a lot of nationalists, they're in the end game. People know that Arlene Foster is the last unionist First Minister. There will be a nationalist voting majority in 2023-24. The Northern Ireland Statistical Research Agency demonstrates that quite clearly. But even if there wasn't a nationalist voting majority, which there will be, in combination with the Alliance Party and bits and bobs like Greens and People for Profit and so on, the unionist majority has gone. And that's another cause for resentment.
Given what the demographics suggest might occur, do nationalists need to be mindful of a creeping sense of triumphalism?
One of the things that nationalists have to convince unionists about is that they have to copper fasten the rights for everybody, because they need human rights and equality more than anybody else. And that has to be conveyed to the unionists. And they haven't copped on to that.
God bless all the people of Northern Ireland.
20 years on from the agreement that took the border out of politics on this island, Brexit put it right back centre stage.
I think Irish nationalism needs to keep the campaign going. They need people alienated from the state. And so they're happier with the likes of the DUP in control, because the DUP, as we've seen, make mistakes in a way that actually end up alienating people from the state, and that's able to be manipulated by Irish nationalism. But equally, the people of Ireland as a whole need moderate unionism to the fore, because they're quite comfortable with building relationships both in Northern Ireland and on this island. And so I do joke with my friends down south that I'm doing my utmost not to land our problem on your lap.
Irrespective of when or if power sharing returns, MLAs will not have a direct input on the shape of any Brexit divorce settlement. That decision will be taken in London.
MPs will have their say when Parliament holds its vote on whether to ratify any eventual deal with the EU. Should the current parliamentary arithmetic remain the same, that vote will be taken in the absence of any Irish nationalist MPs.
I think it does matter, and it's not just for nationalists. I think it's for people who aren't DUP supporters, which can include people in the middle and unionist non-DUP supporters, if you see what I mean. Because Sinn Féin are an abstentionist party, and because of the first past the post system, we're in a situation where the DUP, I think at the last general election, got about a third of the vote, but now have more than 90% of Northern Ireland's representation at Westminster. That is, I'm afraid, democratically sort of difficult. We have essentially all of Northern Ireland's representation is from a party who not only supported Leave, which is not the majority view in Northern Ireland.
The Belfast, London, Dublin axis that facilitated political transformation on this island now appears to be on a negative loop of frustration and resentment. And the tone of some of the rhetoric appears to herald a new low in Anglo-Irish relations.
It'll never be as good as it was just a couple of years ago when we saw our president tour the UK and the Queen of England visit Ireland without fear. Nothing went wrong. It was a very good relationship. But Brexit changes everything. We're going to have to work very, very hard to repair and restore that relationship.
The psychology of any relationship breakdown can lead to denial, tears and anger before a compromise can be accommodated. Diplomats in Brussels, London and Dublin may follow suit.
When the European Union is looking for solutions, it finds solutions. When it's looking for problems, it finds problems. Once we get into the actual hard negotiations on the trading relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union, then hopefully, sensibly, what I expect is the compromises will begin to appear. We all know of the occasions in Brussels when they have been involved in a very difficult negotiation, which the rules said have to be finished by midnight of the particular day in question. And what did they do? They quite literally, and I'm not exaggerating, an order went out to change all the clocks in the building they were negotiating in, so they stopped at 5 to midnight. And it was all done partly in humour, but partly to say, we're going to continue discussing until we get a solution. And it won't be midnight when the rules say we have to stop, because the clocks say it's only 5 to 12, and it worked.
EU diplomats may be able to stop and start the clocks in Brussels. At Stormont, politics remains at a standstill. The Brexit divorce negotiations may yet become more unpredictable. To borrow a phrase that usually signals the beginning of the end of a relationship, it's not EU, it's Brexit.
Jennifer O'Leary reporting. Now, Ian Duncan-Smith's a former Tory leader and a cheerleader for Brexit. I asked him if the EU's plans see keeping Northern Ireland in the customs union and single market